So if you've listened to the podcast before, you know that sometimes I record these introductions, like these small intros to the episodes. I record them out in my minivan in the garage. And it is November something or another, and it's fucking cold in my garage in the minivan. But that's okay. It's a lot different than July when I would sit out here in the sunshine. It's still sunshiny, but it's really cold. Winter is coming. Now it's November. And Thanksgiving is this week, so if you celebrate Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving. If you get to sit around a table somewhere and enjoy some conversation with your family, I'm happy for you. We're going to be doing the same thing this Thanksgiving. It's going to be wonderful. It's also No Shave I don't know what it is. I think it's Movember. No Shave Movember. Anyways, it's Movember, but not... I don't know what the people call it. I don't do it because I don't shave anyways. But it's supposed to bring awareness to literally have no idea what the hell the month is for. Something to do with men and not shaving their faces and growing out their mustaches. And I know that's not it, but because it is No Shave November or Movember, when you're done with that, when it comes time for time to shave December, go to the Refinery Barbershop. At the Refinery Barbershop, you can shave off your Movember mustache or your beard, or even just get it trimmed up looking really, really, really nice. The Refinery Barbershop is located in Springville, Utah, ran by my good buddy Steven. It's a wonderful barbershop, a great place to get a haircut and a beard trim. A straight razor shave, I think they do that. I know they do that. Hot towels, whole 9 yards. It's a great, great space. So go check them out. Last but not least, before we get to who's on this episode, I'm way excited, by the way, is if you want to work with me, I coach men individually, personally, on a one-on-one basis. I work directly with men, helping them expand, connect, and open up emotionally to who they are. Really diving in deep into what they want, how they care for themselves, how they love for themselves, all those kind of different things in a vastly different way than perhaps they've ever done before. And what I have found and what I believe is when you do that, when you open up to yourself, when you connect to your emotions and literally just feel them from time to time, that's all you have to do. The fix is in the feel. And then that opens up everything. That gives you the opportunity to open up to yourself, to the people around you, your loved ones, maybe your spouse, your partner, and then the world itself. It's amazing, but I love it. I'm very, very passionate about it. I'm very, very happy to be able to do it. So if you're interested in finding out more of what I do when I coach somebody, or maybe you're ready to go and you want to hit me up, just reach out. It's Craig@energieslovepodcast.com. You can also go to the website and find out a little bit more info and contact me through there as well. So today's episode 180 million, I don't know what episode it is, 120 something or another. Jessa Reed is on the show, and I'm super excited. I was very, very excited to do this episode. I heard Jessa on a podcast several months ago, 6 months ago. I don't remember how long ago it was. But that's when I heard Jessa for the first time. That's when I learned about her podcast that she does with Aaron Woodall, called Mormon and the Meth-Head. I went and listened to their show and absolutely fell in love with the both of them and their podcast as a whole. They share openly on every fucking episode that they do. Sometimes it's a lot to take in. Almost every time it's a lot to take in. But it's wonderful because it's an honest, truthful conversation between two people that really care for one another and are showing up in that space of being vulnerable, and everybody gets to tune in and share in their journey together. And it's wonderful. It's amazing. And I was way excited to chat with Jessa. She was incredible. She was funny. She was insightful. She's wonderful. She's a stand-up. She's hilarious. You can find all of her information at jessareed.com. You can go and listen to their podcast, which I cannot recommend enough, the Mormon and the Meth-Head. You can go to their website. You can find them just simply anywhere you listen to podcasts like this podcast. Just search them out. They do a great job. Jess has got some tour dates coming up, I'm sure, because she's constantly out there doing her thing. So go to her website, find her information. Follow her on Facebook, Instagram, all those places that we follow people like stalkers. And now you just get to sit back and relax and enjoy another wonderful episode with my guest, Jessa Reed. Here we go.
You're listening to the Energy is Love podcast.
Energy is love.
The Energy is the Love podcast.
The Energy is Love podcast.
Energy is love.
The Energy is Love podcast.
The podcast for the universe.
The Energy is Love podcast.
That's always the most awkward part.
Yeah, I heard you guys have a conversation about it, and Aaron said that I don't believe in room, like I'm a room tone truther. I was just like, no, it's just something about the way when I edited it, it messed it up. So
Yeah, you're in opposition to the room tone.
yeah,
I don't know if it makes a difference either. When I very, very first started, it was like one of the things that I read about.
yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, I will try that. And then I did it, and I'm like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing with that, but...
It was one of the first things I heard too. And so we do it. And I think that if you end up realizing that there's like problematic room tone, you can take it out. But every time that we've had an issue, I've had to manually go through and take echoes out and stuff because I don't know, I could never get it to work, but I also might not understand it at all. So we do it, but then I just cut it off the front and move on.
Yeah. How are you?
Good.
You seem tired.
I am, we travel through these towns where people eat garbage food, and you know, I can't, because I have like health issues that I've learned to maintain with very clean eating. And so when you're stranded and it's like the only thing I can eat is French fries, and it just kind of weighs on me. So we just stopped at Whole Foods. I got some green juice and some protein, and I'll be better. But yeah, I feel physically drained.
It's like one of the shittiest things about traveling, I think.
It is, and it's so much of where comedy is great, is fun to do. It's just awful food. It's awful. It's amazing to me how little fuel food. Seriously, it's food for consumption, for entertainment. It's not like fuel. It's not, and I'm not like part of it is because I can't eat dairy, I can't eat gluten, so I can't eat anything convenient. But also, even if I could eat those things, like they make you feel sluggish and gross and stuff. So we drove around this morning and couldn't find a place where I could just get eggs that weren't like fake eggs rolled up onto some bread, you know? And so I just was like ate French fries for breakfast, and now I feel like I ate French fries for breakfast.
Yeah. Whole Foods is the way to go.
Yeah, but it's like, yeah, please stop at Whole Foods. Let me get some bars and some protein and some green juice and put it all back together. But yeah, it's the whole middle of the country. I've driven across the country and just felt so disgusting by the time I got back to a coast, because it's just diners. Diners are like, you hope to find a diner. You know, it's like fast food isn't an option. So then it's just diners are. Ugh.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This will be great.
I'm very excited. I don't know how much Aaron told you or not, but because I was going to reach out to you when Steph and I were in California a few weeks ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you should have.
You guys were busy and traveling, and you guys had some dates and stuff like that.
Okay.
So that it didn't work out that way. But this worked out great.
Yeah.
So I really, really appreciate it. There's lots that I want to talk to you about. And I always say that at the beginning, and then I never get to any of the things that I want to actually ask you or talk to you about. But the first question that I always ask everybody, and it's the tipping off point, I think, for a lot of stuff, at least that I'm interested in, that I like talking about. And one of the reasons why I like you so much, and I like your guys' podcast so much, is because you guys fucking talk about this stuff all the time in such an open fashion and in such a clear way. So it makes me really happy. But I ask people what form of mental illness they suffer from, and also kind of tailor it in a different way or present it in a different way. Like, where do you struggle when it comes to your mental balance? At least present moment, like right now.
Present moment, I would say anxiety is the one I've dealt with. My relationship with my mental health has been different, has had several different iterations. When I was young, I spent time in mental institutions, and I've been diagnosed with several things that I think I figured my way out of. Anxiety made a comeback about a year ago. And after probably about 10 years of no anxiety and postpartum anxiety and depression I did deal with, but that was very easy to say, like, here's a chemical imbalance. And it was kind of easy to wait out like a bad trip. And then in this last year, I've had social anxiety since I got sober. I was addicted to drugs in my 20s. And so social anxiety has been a thing. And I learned ways to conquer a lot of it and ways to manage a lot of it, ways to just be open and upfront about it in the beginning of social interactions, to just kind of ways to stay outside of myself rather than running inside. And then just regular anxiety showed up. So I think that that's probably been the theme.
How would you differentiate between those two? Like social anxiety as opposed to just like regular, everyday, run-of-the-mill anxiety?
My social anxiety, to be honest, I feel like is a product of my intuition and connection to other people. I think in my 20s, I developed a lot of kind of like, I hate the word psychic, but a lot of kind of gifts. And there was a process of trying to learn how to put up firewalls and not tap into every single person and not absorb their energy and not, and I think in that firewall building, I just lost the ability to connect to people. It became something that freaked me out. And so it feels like I just hide in a room inside of myself. And then my autopilot is just awful. Like my autopilot's not any good. And so rather than saying things that make sense, I start to transpose words and I nervously laugh, or I just stare at the floor because I am way back in the back behind a closed door. And then I make it weird, or if I get around someone else who has the same brand of social anxiety that I have, then it's awful because it's just, we're just standing within a foot of each other staring at our shoes, you know, where the anxiety feels like panic. It feels like, it feels physical. It feels like an adrenaline rush that I can't control. It makes me physically feel bad. It feels like doom sometimes. And it is, in this last year, has really been kind of a journey. I feel like I'm starting to come out of it, but I feel like I went and found the room that I locked my inner child in when I was 11 or 12, and I have gone to rescue her. And I feel like to get to that place, I had to go through like scary thing after scary thing after scary thing. So all of these things that I've spent my life protecting myself from, like rejection, I had to face over and over and over and over again. And I would be in a state of anxiety while dealing with that, while also having to live the life that's right in front of me. So I would get triggered, and then there's been a lot happening. This has also been a very busy year for me in my career, and I'm traveling all the time. And so I think if I was home and just had a normal routine and everything else, it probably would have manifested different, but it's not. It's like, okay, well, now you're anxious. Something triggered this deep pain. You have to figure out what this pain is, while feeling like 5-year-old you when you felt like your parents didn't want you. And then also you have to go on stage and make 100 people laugh right now. And so it just, I've gone in and out of these kind of just long weekends of spiraling and anxiety. So it's called social anxiety. I don't really experience it like anxiety. It's just, I'm awkward is what it feels. You know what I mean? There's not a lot to it. It's just, I'm lost the ability to connect to people naturally. It's something I have to do consciously. And anytime you're like trying to do something, it's fumbly, you know? And so I've gotten a lot better at it, but.
Yeah. Do you think it's because of the anxiety and the way that it's kind of come back in this last year, where it's affected you in that way, where you don't feel as comfortable or as safe in social experiences or interacting with people because of all the other work that you're kind of doing, facing all those other kind of things like you talked about?
I feel like I'm my best this is as good as social anxiety has been for me. It was crippling when I first got clean. I do think there were other things in play. I had only been surrounded by drug addicts for 6 years, and now I'm like back in society. The whole world has changed while I was gone. 9/11 happened while I was gone. Society changed. I was 22 when I started using. Now I'm almost 30. And so a lot of that, I think, contributed to the social anxiety, but it was so bad that I got a job as a waitress, as a server at a restaurant, and couldn't do it because I would walk up to the tables and not be able to utter words. And over the years, I got better. I figured out ways to do things. In like 2016, when it seemed like some things might be happening with my career, I just forced myself to go out and small talk. Because once you get me like talking, like if we can start talking about getting molested as a kid, I'm fine. But it's that small talk that, like, you know, I don't want to call it shallow because it's normal, but that kind of stuff, I don't know what to do. And I'm thinking about every step. I'm like, is this person going to want to hug? Is it like the amount of time that I put into the potential for hugs where nobody else is thinking about it, you know? And then I make it weird because then people will pick up on the fact that I probably am not good at hugging, and then I'll attack hug them because I've already psyched myself up for the hug. So now we're going to fucking hug. And so just weird. But it's so, I'm a lot better now. I've had some, but I am less anxious now about it, but I still make it very weird. I also can't see because I stared at the sun when I was on drugs. And so I can't see like fine details. So people look like other people. And, so I'm still awkward. I'll introduce myself to someone I met 5 minutes ago, you know, because like, no, I'm introducing myself. I'm nailing it. And Aaron's like, you just talked to that person for like 5 minutes. I don't think that stuff's ever going to be better, you know? I think my head's also very far in the clouds. But the anxiety that I have experienced in the last year, I have learned a lot of things about myself, a lot of things that make me question my perception of what consciousness is. I'm working on a theory right now that we just have like 10 of us in our head.
I love that you say it that way. I'm working on my new theory right now.
Yeah.
My paper's almost complete, and I'm going to be releasing it.
I'm the philosopher that nobody asked. Like, no.
So we have 10 people in our heads.
I think I spent years trying to kill my ego, and then realized that that's just a futile, I learned to treat my ego like an annoying roommate and throw it a bone every once in a while and just not let it run the ship, and everything's fine. It has a purpose. It's supposed to be there. Treat it like it's a part of you, but don't let it be the boss. And then this year we've been talking about the idea of a critical companion, that part of you that tells you that you're not worthy or keeps you separate from other people. For me, it manifests as kind of like a bodyguard with too much power. It pushes people away if they get close, prevents me ever from experiencing rejection. And Aaron and I kind of served as mirrors for each other in this last year, where he was the first person that I ever wanted to be vulnerable with, that I ever wanted to be soft with, and that I ever just wanted to like express love to. And but my core fear is rejection. Like my absolute, I just never let it happen. You just couldn't get close enough to do it if you wanted to. I would never directly ask for things. I would never give you enough power to reject me. It was like a subconscious mechanism. And here was this first person that made me want to be like, I love you. And his core fear was being loved. So you can imagine how that worked out. And so it was just a year of me dishing up his worst fear while he dished back my worst fear. And it triggered all of the anxiety, but we immediately married our careers to each other. So now it's just this perfect design where we can't go anywhere. We can't indulge in past behavior. Like in the past, I would have just cut and run. Like I would have just run from somebody who was going to reject me, and I couldn't because and we were so good together. Our career was so good together. So but I know that like I can't chip away at this foundation. I know I can't do the destructive things that I feel like I want to do because we're putting a lot of weight on this foundation. You can't tour with someone and build a business with someone and everything else. And having had just indulged in petty arguments or tearing them apart or pointing fingers or whatever. So I had to stay open, and I had to stay. And the more open I stayed, the more anxious I got, and the more terrified I was. And then the more terrified he got. And so it was this beautiful experience, extremely painful for both of us experience that when we first met, we said it felt like we came into each other's lives to give each other pieces that we were missing. And at that point, we stayed up all night having these amazing spiritual conversations, and everything was beautiful and inspiring. And so we just thought, well, this is how it will always be. This is how we will give each other the pieces that we're missing without any pain, without any frustration. And then once we locked into that, then the real work came in. So that has been, we have had huge breakthroughs in the last couple of months and learned a lot about each other and a lot about ourselves.
You guys have only really known each other for a short time, right? Like a year and a half.
We met in 2014, but we were worlds apart. Mm-hmm. He was still a Mormon. And so the only thing we really had in common is we were both parents. So we were Facebook friends, whatever. He went through his divorce, and I thought his divorce posts were the best thing ever. And, but yeah, this whole journey started about a year and a few weeks ago. It was we were at a comedy festival last October.
It's a lot to fucking have happen. And both of your guys' careers have, taken off in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Both of them have expanded in this last year as well, right?
Yeah.
And how much of that do you think is, because struggling to formulate a word or a question here, because the fact is, looking at it from the outside, right? Because obviously I'm a complete outsider. Just looking at you guys, I've listened to your podcast. I follow you both on social media. Had Aaron on, this podcast back in the day, and looking at it from the outside, like it's all interconnected, obviously.
Yeah.
And listening to you speak of it now, like they are all interconnected in the sense of the work that you've been able to do in the past year and dealing with a lot of the stuff that you weren't ready for or that you chose not to deal with from your past,
right.
Now coming forth and then being able to process it and move through it and then be free from it in a sense and get some freedom from it, even if it's just the opportunity to breathe.
Yeah.
Then you get the opportunity to step into all these other fucking things that you want to do, and those start to expand and open up and so on and so forth. And it's fucking beautiful.
It is.
Like, it's amazing. And then, like, is there a part of you too that has this like overwhelming fear of, because I'm sitting here thinking about all the things that, not that you put your eggs in all this one basket in a sense, because I don't feel like that's the case, but like it's super fucking hard, Jessa.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like you're in business with this man, you've got this podcast with him, you guys are doing these things, both of your careers are taking off, but at the same time, like you guys are still kind of fleshing out what the fuck is this relationship between the two of us as well, and what all does it mean?
The career felt, my relationship with reality in general shifted in the about 4 months before we met up at Big Sky. I was in a marriage. It was great. Just great. For we were coming up on our 10th wedding anniversary, but had been together for like 13 or 14 years. And rapidly we started to drift apart. Drift isn't even a good word. Like rapidly we became magnets that you turned around. Like it was just, we just started to repel each other after having had this perfect relationship. And then I went and I did This Is Not Happening. While I was on stage at This Is Not Happening, suddenly reality stopped feeling like a landscape, and it felt like a timeline. I felt like I understood what a timeline is. It felt like a moving sidewalk almost. And everything felt, I could feel the trajectory. And so I believe I create my reality. I had gotten very proficient at attracting things to myself and creating things and manifesting things. But this felt like this is just what it is, like predestined almost. And I got off the stage, and at the time I'm living in Delaware. I'm a housewife. And I said, I have to move to LA. And so I came back, everyone acted like I was nuts, and I was like, no, this is it. And when I was a kid, I knew I would be famous. I knew it. I signed autographs for people. It's all I ever talked about when I was a kid. And when I was on stage, I felt it in my hand. I felt that. And so 3 months later, I'm at Big Sky with Aaron. We have this weekend where I'm connecting dots for him, which I do all the time. You listen to the podcast, I had a near-death experience and aliens told me I'm supposed to wake people up, whatever.
Yeah, I totally want to talk about alien school.
I love to gloss over that. So
Not
I do
a big
this.
deal. It's just aliens.
I do this all the time. I have helped people connect their dots, which I believe was an arrangement we made before we got here. And, but I was also having an experience with him. And by the end of that week, he left and I made the statement, I feel like I'm supposed to write you into the script of my life, which I guess sounds crazy, but he felt connected to my career in a way that This Is Not Happening set, which I knew would be the jumping off point, felt like it was ours. And I hadn't worked out romantic feelings or anything else yet. I'm still married. It's 2018, so obviously it was like I was free to explore that if I wanted to, but I just knew. And the podcast, he came up with a podcast idea a couple months later. And before that, I was writing TV shows that I wanted to sell when I got to LA. And I was like, I'll make you a writer on those. And I couldn't pinpoint what it was, but it just felt like ours, and it felt definite, and it felt settled. And every little bit of success, like as things started to take off, none of them were a surprise. And I didn't have to have like a desperate want for them. They just felt guaranteed. And then, so there was something about, and we both felt that way once the podcast happened. And there was something that felt, I don't know, predestined isn't the word I want, but kind of just like I can feel the trajectory. And only in a couple of instances where I did indulge in just projecting, believing my projections, clinging to some power struggle, whatever, did I feel that trajectory fade, like the picture on Back to the Future where he looks down and his family is fading, or he fades or whatever. I did feel that a couple of times where, and that just solidified that you have to figure this out. This person is mirroring back your own trauma so that you can find yourself, so that you can heal these broken parts of yourself. Don't stop moving. Don't stop working. Don't give in to what it appears is happening right now. Just keep moving forward. And I don't think either one of us has ever had a fear. Maybe in the midst of like where we're both super triggered, there was a moment. For me, there were times where I felt like I can't escape. I know that if I try to separate my career from him right now, we will both fail, because all of this is connected. All of this is intentional. If we heal in each other's reflections, we're going to do big things together, but we have to do this work. We have no choice. This work is the work. And so I do feel like we figured a lot of it out. We have, but it got to the point where I was just reading books to understand. Once we identified he had a fear of intimacy, I just started reading books about fear of intimacy. And rather than taking things personal, which is the easy way out, it's where you indulge in your own fears. I read books and sought to understand what makes him do what he does. And when I realized that, he's triggered and that these are things that make him afraid, and rather being like, well, you should do this for me, I sought to understand him and sought to love him unconditionally where he's at. And that's where we started to see some change. Because at some point, one of us had to, I had to stop chasing him. I had to stop pushing him because I was freaking him out. And then his reaction to being freaked out was freaking me out. And then we were just in this constant, not constant, the rest of the time it's bliss, you know, which just would make me chase more. So, also my version of chasing, I think, is everyone else's version of just being a normal human being. But I'm usually very aloof. So yeah, that's that. I don't think I'm afraid. And now we have this great kind of we became boyfriend and girlfriend like 3 weeks ago. It's been pretty exciting. And we have this
You guys are totally going steady now.
yeah, we are. Some people, I say that and they're like, you guys weren't already. And I'm like, listen, this is big.
I remember when I listened to the episode where you guys talked about it for the first time. And I'm like, what the fuck?
How did nobody really? That's so crazy.
Because I don't even think I was thinking of it, right? I was just enjoying the episodes. I was enjoying the way you guys were sharing and the way that you guys were talking. And you were both very obviously comfortable with one another.
Yeah.
And do you know what I mean? And it was beautiful. It was beautiful to listen to. Like, that's the type of podcast that I like listening to.
Yeah.
When I came across your guys' podcast, I just started binging on it. And because it was two people showing up in a space and talking openly about all sorts of different stuff, the way that they thought, felt, experienced things, experienced life, talked openly about their past. And it wasn't fake. It wasn't bullshit, uncomfortable, like awkward, useless conversations.
Right.
And so it was really, really, really good. It still is. It's not like it was in the past. It still is. But then I remember listening to that one episode and it was like, I don't remember, it's like 12 or 14 or something.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a minute. And then I like had to go back in my head and think about all the other episodes and then like, okay, all that makes sense now. Yeah. I can definitely see that. But it's funny.
The vision that I had, because in the beginning, What is Love was a very popular episode where people were like, wow, this idea of holding your hand open. And when I said all these things to Aaron, I was talking to him about the first time I said them to him, I was talking about how great my marriage was and how the codependency is what ripped his heart out, is that you were holding on too tight to this relationship. And so that's why you were blindsided, because you were living in this fantasy that love is always forever. And instead of seeing it as a journey that you take with a person, a process that may have an end. And so you didn't see all the signs that this thing was running its course. Nor did you have any part of your mind wrapped around the idea that this may at some point run its course. And I talk a lot about detachment and all this stuff. And then I thought it was a great thread, because then I got very attached to Aaron. And I'm not someone that attaches. I'm someone that worries that I'm not attached enough to my kids. And suddenly I was facing all these things and I thought, okay, this is happening so I can show my work on the podcast. Like, I'll show you how I find my way out of this. I don't have any idea how I'm going to find my way out of this, but I will show my work. And it wasn't received like that. That was, we get a lot of bad reviews after people get to that episode. And I thought maybe it's like seeing your parents fight. You know, I thought maybe that's why people didn't like it. There were obviously some people that I got messages from dudes that were like, we don't want to hear this. And I was like, I don't care what you want. And then he got, messages from women like that. So there was some of that. But also I think it was hard. I just don't like the narrative that I'm some guru. And because Aaron had been so open and vulnerable several times on the podcast, and it seems like I'm life coaching him. But behind the scenes, there's so much work that he's helping me with. And at that point in the podcast, I hadn't really gotten honest about any of it. But a lot of it was triggered by him and my dynamic with him. And so I just, I wanted to get honest. And, but then I got super freaked out by people's, which is weird because I don't really give a shit what anyone thinks. But I think because I'm making something, I'm making art and it's a little bit different. But
yeah, it still taps into that part of not wanting to be rejected, even if it's from people that you don't give a fuck about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I want to ask you, because one of the things that I found fascinating, one of the things that I wanted to, listening to you talk openly about not just all the experiences that you've had in your life and all the trauma and all the things like that. And we don't have to go into all of it, because people can go and listen to your podcast and learn way more. There's hours and hours and hours of the Jessa Reed story. And But one of the things that I really liked was, for me personally, listening to you talk about your time using and what it was like and the experiences and things like that. For like, how long, you said you started using when you were like 22. How long were you an addict in a sense where you were using meth on a regular basis?
I used meth. I started using meth and then I did it not moderately, but in a way that I was still functioning with one foot in life for about 2 months. And then I left. I left my kid, I left my family, and did meth full time for 5.5 years. And that my entire life revolved around meth. I was a full-blown drug addict. And I had just a different experience than everyone else I know that did drugs, in that I believe it was absolutely necessary for me. My mom was a meth addict when I was a kid. I don't think I ever would have made peace with that. I don't think I ever would have understood her in a way that would have helped me heal. I didn't think she wanted me. And there's a lot that happens when you're a kid and you get the impression that your parents don't want you. And then things happened to me on her watch. I got molested and nobody did anything about it. The guy who molested me, he used the fact that he used the bad relationship with my mom to keep me quiet. And there's just a lot of knots inside my brain that I don't think I could have untied if I didn't, first of all, leave society, and second of all, experience, stand in her shoes and understand that, this bitch was just high. Like she was just loaded and I was annoying. You know what I mean? It had nothing to do with me as a person or anything else. She probably thought she loved me and I was just high, and I had to get high and then watch other people with their kids. I had to get high and choose drugs. I had to get addicted and choose drugs over my own kid to realize that wasn't a judgment on my kid. Drugs are powerful. And also, I was disillusioned with reality from the time you start to find out that they tell you magic's not real and Santa Claus and all this, and you kind of come out of this fantasy, and then reality always seemed like just a really shitty delusion to me. It just seemed like, well, this doesn't feel more real than magic to me, but it's lamer. It's definitely lamer. It's a bummer. And wait a second. So y'all think we just exist once on this planet to work and do and a job you hate, in a marriage you don't like, to pay for a house you don't give a shit about. And I was like, I don't want to live like this. This doesn't feel right. And so I felt disillusioned. And the first time I did speed, or psychedelics really, but the first time I did speed, I felt like I could see the wiring under the board. I felt like I could get to the veil. I always felt like I was living in the Truman Show, and I felt on drugs. I felt like I was going to find the door, and I did. So for me personally, drugs were a vehicle to kind of breaking out of the matrix. Nobody else had that experience that I know, so I don't recommend it. It's hard not to sound like I'm doing an advertisement for meth. Everyone else was picking holes in their faces and going to prison.
See, I don't know if you know this about me, but I used to be a cop.
Oh,
and
shit.
So I would listen to you talk about those experiences when you're high and using and all the chaos that ensues in that space. And I would look at it from the perspective of, because obviously I dealt with plenty of people that were on meth, and plenty of people that were heavily committed meth addicts that we dealt with on a very, very regular basis. And I had the perspective, obviously, of what it was like at the time for me as the police officer. Yeah. And then you talk about magic, right, all the time on your guys' podcast. And I love the way that you talk about it. But at the same time, it's my perception of listening to you talk about some of these experiences was like being high on meth and being in that space and being in that environment, you really got the opportunity to see, like you said, kind of behind the curtain in a sense. Yeah. But it's a really easy way I shouldn't say it's a really easy way, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you could see energy work. You could see the alignment of synchronicity and the events that take place and the ginormous fucking spin of the universe working like on the microcosmic scale in everyday life and interactions with people. Yeah. Because you would see the correlating things between this action and this choice, and like sometimes just sitting back and watching it lay out and happen before you and seeing it all and why it worked this way and how it works this way. And there's randomness to it, but yet it's like the beautiful chaos that ensues in that synchronistic place of the universal spin.
Yep.
And I had the exact same fucking experience on the opposite end of the spectrum as a police officer, where I got to the point where I would be able to go find meth addicts that we needed to find because they had a warrant or they were suspects or whatever. And I would just come to work and be like, I'm going to go find them. And then like half an hour later, they would be in handcuffs.
Holy
because
shit.
I could go out and then like drive around and then just be like, I'm going to turn left, I'm going to turn right. And then I would like notice the one fucking shiny object or something like that. They would be like, I'm going to pull over here. I'm going to be in the right place at the right time. But yet I saw all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Right? And that didn't happen in the beginning of my career, obviously. That was at a point in my life where things were shifting and changing and things were happening. But my spiritual awakening or my journey into the space of spirituality and into the universe and kind of my greater, bigger belief in regards to all of this shit started really solidifying and coming forth in my life, even though it's always been there, right? And I can look back at my childhood and things like that, but really started coming forth when I was a police officer.
What year is that?
It's been 3 years since I left law enforcement.
Okay.
So like, I'm trying to remember when I started. I think I started in like 2008, 2009 or something like that. And it was really neat for me to see all of that play out and the kind of see the inner workings of how things happen, because I was experiencing real life shit.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't the stuff that I was experiencing as a police officer was real. Like it was the real meat of life in a sense, right? It's not half-assed fake drama. It's like real fucking drama that takes place and you're right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And so when I listen to you talk, I'm like, oh, that's the other end of the spectrum. Because as a crackhead, you experience the meat of life at times, like the real shit that takes place that like defines people and has the not the opportunity, but has the ability to be a catalyst, like a catalyst moment in their life.
Right.
Because of what happens and takes place. And so you got to see that end of the spectrum from the sounds of it, at least.
Yeah, I do think that there has to be. Someone just left a really weird long YouTube comment on the episode of Bert Kreischer's podcast that I did. But he talked about how enlightenment through tapping into that darker place, because then you have the full picture. And if you've only ever lived over here in the light and you haven't been exposed to or seen the darkness, like truly seen it, it's hard for you to have that full big picture. But that's true with the patterns. I think about how my brain is just constantly processing patterns and getting clues about stuff, and how that is a symptom of when someone's on meth. I remember my mom would like put all purple clothes together because your brain does this weird thing where it's like, this is purple, this needs to be, everything that's purple needs to be included in this. And next thing you know, she has a purple shoelace tied around her head and shit. Because your brain is crunching numbers of patterns all the time. And for me, it just made it easy for me to see the interconnectedness of everything, and the macro and the micro all in one big thing.
Did you have clarity like that before that time period, you think? Or did you, because you said you kind of had to go through that experience of being on meth.
Yeah, I think that's where everything came together. I had gifts. I think I had an awareness. I didn't realize, like, I couldn't articulate this delusionment with reality. Because I had mental health issues and spent time in institutions and everything, I wrote most of it off as I must be crazy. Then I did like 5 years in Christianity trying to find the veil, and tapped into the gift of discernment. And a prophetess that I ran into told me that I had it. And then shortly after she told me that, which it made no sense to me, it was very abstract when she said it, I developed the ability to like see people's trauma and see their self-deception, like where they're lying to themselves. And at the time I was running like a youth prison ministry, and it went from like going over Bible verses to me being like, It's always like, you know, whatever happened to you when you were a kid is what is preventing you from having this. And you need to be honest with yourself about this. And so it turned into this completely different kind of meeting. And then I got called to the office and told that I wasn't allowed to do that anymore, even though I was nailing it, because my husband wasn't operating in those kind of gifts. And so God wouldn't have given them to me if, and that kind of put that away for a while. And then it was when I had the near-death experience that I realized, like, oh, there was evidence of gifts the whole time. I just didn't know what they were. And I see that. I was just on a really sad thread in Reddit where somebody said, what were your first symptoms of schizophrenia? And I have said before that, like, I was absolutely schizophrenic. I think you unplug from the mass delusion, and then you have a journey to get to your real self, and it's full of a lot of scary shit, and a lot of people get lost on that journey. And when I first unplugged, it felt like 1,000 radios playing at once, and I could hear car alarms, and I could hear a million people talking, and I had to learn how to be able to control it's like there's a control room somewhere that I don't know how to operate, and I had to learn how to fine-tune things. I had to learn to tune into people when I want to and not when I don't want to, and I had to learn what is good information to have, what isn't good information to have, what's my issue, what's my problem, what's not my problem. Like, and a lot of this thread, there were a couple people describing legit schizophrenia, legit, you know, paranoid belief that everybody is trying to everyone that cares about them is trying to rape them and murder them, and, you know, can't leave the house without putting on makeup. The makeup is very obvious that she is schizophrenic, you know, like stuff that I have schizophrenic relatives that are legit schizophrenic, but there is also just kind of a bit of tapping into your own gifts and powers that gets written off as schizophrenia. And it's not dangerous. It's not hurting you. You know what I mean? I don't think hearing voices in and of itself is dangerous. I hear a lot of voices.
It's such a slippery slope.
It is,
right?
though. Yeah, I'm not a doctor, and I'm not recommending that anyone don't seek psychological help. But as I was reading the thread, it made me sad because there were several things that are just like, no, man, you're just hearing people's. The first time Aaron and I talked about, I said I can hear when people lie, and I can hear what they're actually saying. And he said, what is that like? And when you say hear, people think audibly. Mm-hmm. And I do audibly hear things every once in a while. But I said, it feels like subtext. It feels like in a movie when one thing is happening, but they've already set it up in a way that you can tell what's really happening. That's what it feels like. I'll be talking to someone. They'll be telling me why they're upset about something, and I can just hear what it actually is. I can hear the projection that they're trying to convince me of, and usually themselves, and then I can hear what their actual motive is. It just feels very obvious to me. It feels like subtext. It feels so obvious it's difficult for me to lie because I feel like everyone can hear that. And Aaron said, oh my God, I've done that my entire life, and it makes me so frustrated. It makes conversations very difficult because then I want to call them on it, and then they don't know what I'm talking about. And then we had a conversation about self-deception and stuff. And here, this is something that has always caused him, because he didn't look at it as a gift. He didn't look at it as a power that not everyone has. He didn't realize that about himself. He thought there was something wrong with him, that he was having conflict with people. And it was like, no, you just have a higher dimensional ability, you know? And so when I hear people saying like they're getting feelings about things or they're seeing messages, like I see messages constantly. I walk by and a headline on a newspaper will just stick out to me in a way that I know it's relevant. And it's typically whatever I'm thinking about in my mind. There'll be a headline or a song lyric or whatever. And that's, some people believe that is the beginning of their schizophrenic break.
Not some people. Like if we describe that to the masses, that's exactly what, I mean, that's how it's portrayed in movies.
Yeah.
Where, you know, they're going to portray somebody that's schizophrenic, and that's their progression where they start to hear things and see things, and newspaper articles will jump out at them. And like The Beautiful Mind with Russell Crowe. Yeah. Where he's like this brilliant fucking guy, but he's psychotic. He's not psychotic, but he's schizophrenic. And it's exactly that.
Yeah. I do acknowledge that there's a good chance I'm probably schizophrenic, but it just works. It works. I'm happy.
Well, I think because this is why the conversation surrounding mental health is so important to me, because I think everybody is on this same fucking spectrum. And it's not just in the context of mental health, but it's also in these abilities or this fucking intuitiveness that everybody is on that spectrum. Everybody has the ability to feel and sense energy, whether it's from the world around them or people.
Yep.
Some people are just on this end of the spectrum where they're like, I don't know, I just feel kind of funky, right?
Yeah.
Everybody knows what butterflies are in their stomach. Everybody knows when you walk into a room and it just doesn't quite fucking feel right.
Right.
Everybody's had that experience, but not everybody can go to the other end of the spectrum where they walk into the room and can fucking hear shit and see stuff and know exactly what's going on and like talk to somebody and be like, oh, this motherfucker is dangerous. I need to get away from them immediately.
Yeah.
And on the outside, they look totally fucking normal and fine, but you can just feel everything coming off of them. So there's this huge spectrum that we all fall on. And it's the same context with mental health. Like we're all schizophrenic on this big spectrum, just some of us, it manifests differently, right?
Yeah.
And it's life experience, I think, that leads us into these places where we go from one end of the spectrum to the other. And it's a sliding scale where we can come and go. Like you had time where you were institutionalized.
Yeah.
And you suffered from all of these different things throughout your life. And look at you now, right?
Yeah.
You slid up and down this spectrum your whole life, and also in the context of like energy and being able to connect to it and work with it and hear it and recognize it and acknowledge it. That's a spectrum as well for you.
Yeah.
And I think everybody fucking falls on that spectrum. But I get so tired of people, not tired, like it honestly, it makes me sad that people don't think of things in that way.
Yeah.
And that we still want to compartmentalize and make everything black and white to where those people are crazy and we're not. Like the rest of society is normal. It's just the people that are walking up and down the street, talking to themselves and hearing voices.
Yeah.
It's like, motherfucker, you hear voices too. You just don't acknowledge them.
And what is what is less crazy? What is more crazy about me reading seeing a headline and it resonating with my gut that this is the right decision to make? Why is that more crazy than me just following what everyone else says is right when it completely conflicts with what my gut says? And that is, it never resonated to me that because everyone else believes it's real, it's real. It just feels like a collective delusion and that I'm just better at dreaming than everyone else. Like it just doesn't feel, I don't think anyone else should follow me. I think everyone should follow what makes sense to them. And I don't like the idea that normal is what everyone else is doing, because everyone else is just trying to pretend to be normal. They're just trying to be what the person next to them is. And everyone's bullshitting. Everyone's hiding. And everyone's hiding because no one's being honest because everyone's afraid of looking crazy. And I love that we now have this generation that is open about being depressed, open about being anxious. I also don't think that those are deficiencies. I think that everything is frequency. I think that we are on our way to collectively living in a higher frequency. I think that some of the younger people were just hardwired to already be at that higher frequency, and that just being in this kind of more dense world that's dying feels awful. Feels like they are, like you described, walking into a room and you feel, but they're living in an entire world like that. And I think getting triggered, I love the word triggered. I love that we now can identify when something just flips a switch for us. I don't like the idea of hiding from it. I think that a trigger is a map, and follow that map back to the pain. Don't get caught up in the projection, because you're going to project it straight onto the first thing you see, or the first thing that triggered you. But if you're feeling a deep pain over something, jealousy, follow that back. Rejection, follow that back. Like that was the exercise that I learned. Pain is a roadmap. Follow that map back. Find, I was a hypnotist at one point, and I know that it's a lot. And we did age regression, where you would take the person back to like the symptom creating event.
Yeah, that trauma point.
Yeah. And so when I got triggered over the course of the last year, it was extremely painful, but because I would want to lock into what was happening and be like, no, I feel this pain because of this. But my logical mind would be like, yeah, but he just did that because of that, or this situation played out like this, because I can see the big picture always. So why do you still feel this way? This pain isn't from this event right now, which you can clearly understand. Follow that back. When's the last time you felt like that? When's the first time you felt like that? And following that back. But I think when we don't want to do the work, or we just want to say, I have anxiety. I think it's a process that I'm going through. I think I'm experiencing a lot of anxiety because I am facing a lot of demons. I'm doing a lot of walks through the valley of shadow of death, a lot of dark nights of the soul, back to back to back to back. And that anxiety is the way it feels when you're stepping out of your comfort zone and you're going back, and you're I'm facing, monsters under the bed, things that I've hid from my whole life. Facing rejection, allowing rejection to happen, was such a journey that was like oscillated between, this is the worst pain I've ever felt, and why did I run from this? This is just slightly awkward. But I saw the results immediately. I saw from the first time I had a perceived rejection experience with Aaron, I became so bold in a way I had never been before, because I faced it. I got rejected and I was like, well, that was like not the best thing I've ever experienced, but not what I didn't need to take all these long ways around everything to avoid it. And I became better in work. I started directly asking for things because I wasn't afraid of a no. And so it was opening me up. I could see the results. And so then I would push further into the anxiety, and I would push further into these things. But I think anxiety, depression, I think they're all maps. I think they're maps to finding the broken parts of yourself. And I don't like identifying as any, I had to learn to stop identifying as an addict. And that was a painful identity to let go of.
Identity is a huge thing.
Yeah.
That's been like super fucking present for me this year, where I finally had the awareness and realization I had to stop identifying as a police officer, because it had been so long since I was a cop. And it wasn't even like I was still like introducing myself as a police officer, or, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wouldn't meet people and like talk about it. But internally within my own head, and the way that I thought of myself, and even like, at the end of the day, I still had so much value placed on it. So eventually I would work around in the conversation with somebody new to bring value to me, so that they would look at me in a different way, in some respectable manner, because at one point I was a police officer, and there is some part of society that thinks that's a noble profession, and that there's some goodness there. And so I would always, in one way, shape, or form, bring it around there. And I had so much identity wrapped up in that. And I mean, that was who I was for a very, very long time. And that's, being able to separate from that has been both freeing, but then also like immediately, subconsciously, I just grabbed onto something else to identify as.
Yeah.
Something else to like, this is where my value and my worth is. And now that's like, okay, like, I don't want to identify as necessarily anything in a sense. I want to be opposed to that, in the sense of all I really am is just this guy. Like, I'm this guy who's here doing the best that he fucking can. And I don't need to identify myself, because everybody always asks, like, what are you? What do you do? Right? We have all of these terms and these phrases to basically pinpoint your identity, so then I can put you in a box, and then I know how to react and respond to you. And I hate that. Like, what do I do? Fuck, I do a lot of things. I am a lot of things. This multi-layered person that I am, that exists, isn't so easily identified. It's just one fucking thing.
Yeah, that is, we did that episode where Aaron talks about losing his identity when he left Mormonism. It's like, now what am I though? Mm-hmm. And I still feel like I'm Mormon, but I don't believe in the church. And I thought, because I kind of shed identities like skin every few years. And so you see people who were in my, and then the whole scene changes. I leave the state. It's a whole new cast. I'm really struggling with this. This whole new cast of characters. And if you talk to people from different phases of my life, they know a completely different version of me. And I think the only time that I consciously felt like I was losing my identity. And this is something that we have recorded but haven't released yet on
I feel
ours.
like you guys have like 15 fucking episodes that you're holding on to for one day.
First of all, we throw away like 30%.
Yeah.
But we record in, it takes forever for us to both be to be synced up to where they're good. And then we record a ton. And then, for various reasons, we say the podcast decides itself. Like it's a very intuitive process. And this one on addiction has been very difficult for me to record. And now it's difficult for me to release because, my relationship with the identity as an addict has been a long process of, I don't think I am one. And that was a really hard conclusion for me to come to. It was first for a long time just hard for me to stop identifying as an addict. But I realized that I when I was trying to buy a hypnosis business from a woman, and I just like worked it into a conversation, like you said, just because it felt like the premise. It felt like the premise of who I was. And here I was, almost 4 years clean, had never had the desire to use again, quit on my first try because I was bored. And I'm in an interview to buy a woman's business. And then I say, well, I feel like I should tell you I'm an addict. And she was like, yeah, I know. And I thought, like, did she look me up on the internet or something? And she said, you wear it like a name tag. You wear it written across your forehead. And it's strange to me. And I said, like she just kind of blew my mind in the moment. And I was like, but what do you mean by that? And she said, it's strange that you identify as something you don't do anymore. It just seems like a weird thing to focus on. And in that moment, because what she said really kind of lined up with my own spiritual beliefs, which is, don't think about things you don't like. And in that moment, I realized how counterintuitive it was to me to identify as a part of myself I didn't want to indulge in anymore. And then it was years later when I was like, I don't want to do it because I quit because I was bored. I wasn't desperate. I wasn't afraid. I didn't want my life back. There was nothing else. I was just like, well, this ran its course, which is kind of how I am about everything. And so then I was like, I might not be an addict. And that, because I know addicts and that's not it, and then I was like, well, of course I was an addict. I shot up in my neck, but that's just how I am. If I'm going to experience something, I jump in with both feet. I was addicted to meth. I don't think I could ever do meth in moderation. I don't think many people can, but like I didn't want to do other drugs, like I wasn't interested in, I wasn't a dumpster. Like you see most addicts, you put any drug on the table, they do it. I would just always sit them out, But so it's been this kind of journey. And then I've just had years where I didn't want to tell people I didn't think I was an addict because I, at first didn't want them to think I was going to relapse. And then when it became obvious I wasn't going to relapse, I shared it with a couple people and then they relapsed, which I realized that they were going to do anyway, but they did use me as an excuse to do it. And then I felt like maybe I'm too good at pitching my own bullshit. You know what I mean? Like maybe I make things sound cool and I just should never tell anyone.
Do you ever think that that's what you're doing is like pitching your own bullshit and buying it? Like, no, because the way that you talk about, like, I just quit because I was bored, like kind of, there's part of that, Jessa, that sounds kind of like bullshit, that there has to be more there in the sense of like, now granted, I understand like just making the decision and then like tomorrow's, and doing it. Yeah. Like there's goodness there, right? There's nobility there that like, that's something to take pride in a sense. But at the same time, like you and I both know how fucking difficult that is. And it's not just something that, I mean, it can be just something that is a switch that is flipped. And then the next day you just change courses.
I do think it was like a 6-month, process that I didn't even realize was taking place. But I stopped shooting up because I realized like this is magical thinking. It's very difficult to find a vein. That's why I was shooting up in my neck. And then so it was like, I had like a 30% success rate and I would chase this stupid rush that I most of the time wouldn't get and would end up being frustrated. And I was like, apply what you understand about life in general and stop chasing something that just leads to frustration most of the time. So then I switched to different ways of doing it, which then I became a little less high, a little more tuned into reality, because you get way higher when you're shooting up. And then once that process started, the drug itself had changed. They had busted, your people had busted all of the labs, and now we were having to get it from Mexico. And it was this very processed stuff that kind of gave me a headache. And it gave everyone a headache, but I was like, hey, this isn't fun like it used to be. It's giving me a headache, you know? And I just I never had this chasing the dragon type relationship with it. I felt very tuned into the fact that this isn't that great anymore. And then I went to my dad's house for 2 weeks, and this is the first time I'd ever strung together 2 weeks, I think, in my time doing drugs. And I only strung that together because I had to eat all my drugs at the airport because I did something shifty at the airport, and the security was coming after me, I thought. And while I was there, my dad's in recovery, and we have one conversation about it at the end of 2 weeks. But during that 2 weeks, there were things that I had attributed to meth that I realized were just a part of me now. I was like, wow, I'm laughing a lot. I am smart. I still feel smart. And I had thought I was only smart because I was on drugs, you know? And so just tiny, kind of how Aaron describes these shelf moments. There were just things over the course of that 6 months that were just going on maybe I don't need drugs. And I just never wanted to quit. There was never a part of me where I hear people talk about like desperation. I would watch people go to detox. Like when things got hard, there was never a part of me that was like, I want to stop doing drugs. I was like, this is the lifestyle that I've chosen. This is the cost of doing business. These are things that happen to people who do drugs. And I had horrible, dark, violent experiences and just accepted them as part of doing drugs and no intentions of ever quitting. And then at the end of that trip, my dad says to me, if you get home and things are stale, you're always welcome here. And by the way, my dad thought I was dead until like 4 months before this. And if he would have said anything darker than, if he would have said anything other than stale, it would not have planted a seed, because if you want to snap me out of something, convince me it's boring. If he would have said you get home and things are awful, they're scary, they're whatever, like none of that would have resonated. But I got home and my boyfriend had robbed my roommates, and so then I couldn't live with them. Now I had to live with him, and he was violent, and I had said I was never going to live with him again. And then I get there, and there's a camera with the pictures of the girl that he was fucking, that he said he wasn't fucking when I was gone, and blah, 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 blah. And in my head, I just thought, stale. This is stale. I have done all of this. I don't care for any of this. This is dumb. And within 10 days, I had another violent encounter with him. And I was just like, I feel like I'm going to keep circling this dude. And I just don't, nobody's going to treat me this way. But I feel like I'm going to keep going back because drugs are like that. And I'm just going to go wherever the bag is. And I'll just move to Delaware. And I made all these arrangements to have the drugs sent to Delaware. And then I was on the airplane and was like, nobody's going to send me the drugs. I'm going to send them money, and they're going to steal my money because they're tweakers. They're going to try to send me the drugs. They're going to fuck it up. And then if they do send me the drugs, am I going to be high by myself in Delaware? Fuck it. I'll just quit. And that was it. That was literally it. I never had one craving. By the time I landed, I was like, I'm sober now. I don't do drugs. And it was it. I didn't give a shit. It was literally that easy for me. And there was a long time that I felt guilty even getting congratulated on sobriety, because I feel like if I wanted to get high, I'd get high. There is no discipline in me not using. I gave myself the option of using for the last few years. And every time I'm like, tonight's the night I'll drink tonight. And then I think, oh, but it's going to dehydrate me. And tomorrow I'm not going to feel very good. And what if I get nauseous? And it prematurely ages you. And I learned how to do all these things without alcohol. Why would I reintroduce this? And I don't want to. If I wanted to, I would. And people would ask my advice on how to get sober. And I'm like, just let it finish. Stop running from it, go into it, let it run its course, which is extremely dangerous advice if someone's on opiates. But that's the only thing that's what I did. I just did it all the way and then got bored. I really was just like, meh. So I don't know. I think maybe I'm not an addict. I just don't, because I'm just like, I feel bad because I definitely would get high. I did the same thing with smoking cigarettes. I really liked cigarettes. When I got it in my head that I would quit smoking cigarettes, I didn't even want to. Like my boyfriend, soon to be husband, was just quit smoking and became an instant prick about it. And I said, I will smoke my last cigarette on July 17th because I was going to go visit my mom, and I was like, I'll be triggered by her smoking. And so I'll smoke my last cigarette on July 17th. I loved smoking cigarettes. I loved it. And then that whole month, every cigarette sucked. My whole last month, I was like, I don't even know why I'm bothering. This is gross. And I thought about all the pros of not smoking. But up until that point, I never had any intentions of quitting. And I was like, age, I'm never going to be able to run or do any of the things that other people do. It just smells bad. I get yelled at work. I hated needing it. I hated if I couldn't get a smoke break, how I would get like bitchy and stuff. And so I was like, I'll just quit. I smoked my last cigarette. I said, this is my last cigarette. And I just never smoked another cigarette. And in my head, there have been times where I smell them and they smell good, or I smoke in photo shoots and I'm braced for after photo shoots for cravings, and just have it already in my head that if I have cravings, like I cannot indulge in one craving. But same thing. I just quit. I didn't make a bit. So this isn't food. I feel like I'm an addict. I feel like I have experienced addiction with food, where I was doing something that was not in my best interest, that I said I wouldn't do, and then I was doing it anyway, and then hating the consequences and swearing I would do it different, and magical thinking and all of that. I've experienced all of that with food, and then learning that I was somehow allergic to a lot of these foods fixed it. Looking at it different, stop chasing this losing weight idea and start listening to how I feel when I eat these foods. And then realize like, oh, this was some kind of weird spiral that I was in because it's making me sick, you know.
How old are you?
41.
You talked earlier about like you have my head.
I know, it's okay. Take a breath, Jess.
All over this fucking place. Trying to think of like, I don't even know what the fuck question I was going to ask you. So, like, let's bring it down a little bit. Let's make it a little bit easier. Wonderful fucking conversation. Thank you so much. Like, there's so much there. Like, I'm happy for you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm happy for you. I think it's amazing. I think it's inspiring. One of the things that I really like about what you guys are doing, both with, I mean, I love listening to Aaron talk about being a fucking Mormon, especially here in Utah. Do you know what I mean? I grew up LDS. I wasn't as ingrained in it as he was. We were half-ass Mormons. We were Jack Mormons. It was like just the thing that we did because you live here in Utah, and I grew up in a small town. So I wasn't, I could really kind of give two shits about it. And then we just stopped going to church because it was too hard for my mom to try to drag all of us there because it was too much of a fight.
Yeah.
But I love listening to him talk about it because I think it's very, very much like needed and profound for people who are in that same circumstance and in that same place of looking at the church and thinking, what the fuck? Like there's so much right now with that religion that is like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
What the fuck are you telling us? What the fuck are you saying? All the information that you're putting out is so like counter to what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking and what society as a whole, even though we don't really care what society as a whole is doing, but still it's so counter. So I really like that aspect of it. And then the way that you openly speak about all these issues that you just got done kind of vomiting out this microphone at this point, I think is wonderful for people to hear. I listen to you and I think about so much, like, so the really fucking cool part, Jessa, is so much of like, you're a parent, I have kids as well. We always think about how fucked our kids are going to be if they have to go through some of these things and experience some of these things. And the fact is, like, everybody's on their own path and their own journey. And yeah, they might be fucked and their life might be terrible. But that's okay. Like they can get through stuff, like everything, like you're inspiring in the sense that, like, not to sit and like put you up on some pedestal or something like that, but it's inspiring to hear what you've gone through, at times consciously, like making a choice to do certain things, but also the things that stemmed from some of your trauma and some of your experiences, and the fact that you aren't, like you said, maybe you are schizophrenic, so what?
Yeah.
But the fact is that you're successful, that you're an active member of not just society, but like in your own life.
Yeah.
Like you're not checked out. You're living the life that you want to live. You're living the life to continually, I feel, move forward in your own evolution. Like you're always striving to be, my mouth's getting all, you're always striving to be more and to be a higher version of yourself and to continue the process of your own individual evolution, separate from what the fuck anybody else may think you need to be doing. And I think that is an important thing for people to hear and to take away, because so many times, like I know plenty of people that are addicts that would stay stuck in that identity. And even if they would, not just fight that constant battle back and forth of getting clean and then relapsing and everything like that, but they get stuck in that space because they think that they have to, or that they are stuck, or that they're not worthy, or that they don't, like being able to go through those things and then push past that spot where you confront like your own demons.
Yeah.
And then be able to go into that space. That's the part that I think people need to do more of as a whole. And to hear you talk about it, I think is going to help other people as well face some of those things.
I hope so.
Do you know what I mean? And I'm sure you've gotten some of that feedback, and I'm sure you see that in some of the stuff, but it's like anything else. When people share, Jessa, when people open up and truly share their life and their experiences, and can be vulnerable and share that vulnerability, even if it's on a fucking podcast, right? Because for you, it's sitting and being vulnerable in front of Aaron, because I'm sure that there's times where you forget the fact that there's people listening, right?
Yeah.
And, but just your opportunity to do that with Aaron is helping so many people. And then it gives them the opportunity to do it one-on-one with the people that they need to.
Yeah, there is a thing that happens after I do a podcast, especially if I do like other people's podcasts, where but in the space between recording the podcast and when the podcast actually comes out, I'm replaying. I can only remember like 3 things that I said. They were all stupid, or they were all too much, or like whatever. And I'm like nauseous, and I'm worried. And it's just kind of running in the background as and I think that that's a product of opening up and getting vulnerable. And then we get feedback from people, we get messages from people, and we get so much fan mail that is like, I attempted suicide right before I found your podcast, or before I heard you on this podcast, and then heard your podcast. Somebody came up to us last night and was talking to Aaron about an episode where Aaron cried about his divorce. And the guy's eyes filled with tears when he was sharing it with us, and then I got choked up, and I feel so honored because I've just been vomiting information on people my whole life. You know what I mean? Like people have had to tolerate this shit for me for a long time, and I had no idea it was like that I could do it into a microphone and that it would help people. And Aaron is kind of the same way. We're both the kind of people that are very open, and that is kind of the way that we neutralize our own pain, is to get it out and to have it be something that other people need to hear, because I'm not I've always been too open. You know what I mean? Like I share way too personal shit very quick, because that's the only way I know how to talk. And so to have I didn't realize how many people were in the exact same position, but they were just holding it in because they thought they were the only one. You don't really get, I never really had the full, never fully understood how rampant a lot of this stuff was before the podcast, and how many things that usually almost every episode that comes out, one of us doesn't want it to come out. Like one of us is like, I don't like this one, and the other one has to like pep talk them into it. because we were the one that got very vulnerable on that one. We were the one that shared a lot of things. We were the one that were afraid said something offensive or whatever. And so then we put it out, and then it's so good to hear people come back and be like, I thought I was the only one. You know, I wasn't able to put words on. I couldn't find a metaphor to describe what I was experiencing, but that's what this is. And that's so, for a comedy podcast, it's so...
yeah, is it a
yeah,
it's
I
definitely
just the
fucking
other
funny
day,
at times, but...
I was like, we should change... We would be in the charts if we changed it to mental health or spirituality. And I think it probably qualifies as one of those. Like, let's get off these saturated comedy charts.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's mental health, I think, probably, which was like not how we saw it going originally. We totally thought it was just going to be Mormon and meth jokes, and it took on a life of its own pretty quickly. But
I think it's amazing.
Thank you.
It's why, well, I heard John Bird's podcast, and the way that you shared openly and were vulnerable even in that experience.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, oh, I fucking like this girl. And then I go and listen to your guys' podcasts, and I'm like, holy shit, like there's a plethora of information here I fucking love. So I knew nothing about your podcast. I knew nothing about you.
Did you know Aaron already?
No, I didn't fucking know any of it.
Oh, wow.
I just heard you on Bert's show, and then I'm going find your podcast afterwards, and then I binge on it, and then I'm like, realize, wait a minute, like this guy fucking lives in Utah? Like,
oh my God, that's crazy.
Yeah. So your openness and your willingness to share is why I'm sitting here today. And
thank you.
You know, why people hopefully on my podcast, or the people that listen to my podcast, will do the same thing. Well, they'll hear you and they'll be like, oh, I got to go listen to this other one now.
Yeah.
And then they get this huge amount of information that you guys have provided. And it's wonderful. It's really, really good stuff. And I applaud both of you for showing up and putting it out there, because I think it's needed. And it's like you said, you didn't realize how many people experience and deal with all this same stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about. Like, we're all on this same fucking spectrum where nobody's normal.
Yeah.
Nobody's like, you know, happy 100% of the time and living this beautiful fucking life. We slip in and out of all of these places all of the time.
Yeah.
And sometimes we get stuck there for extended periods of time. But I think hearing about other people talking about it gives people the inspiration to realize, fuck, I don't need to be stuck in this place anymore. Look at her, or look at him, or look what they're doing. I can do better. I can stretch more. I can get outside of this spot that I thought I was stuck in.
Yeah.
And I think that's incredible.
I love that. Sorry for all the things I ever said about police on the podcast.
I say plenty of bad things about police. The fact is, they're assholes.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of great... I mean, I had a lot of not ending up in jail, but I just think because they couldn't stand me. But
yeah, I'm sure you never had a wonderful interaction with a police officer. And that sucks.
Yeah, no.
Because the fact is, I can almost guarantee you every interaction you did have with a police officer, that guy or that girl is a good person.
Yeah.
And has like a really, really sweet heart and really just wanted to help people. But the job itself just fucks them over so significantly bad.
Well, and I'm sure that it feels like from their perspective that they do want to help people, and helping people was to get people like me off the streets, you know, that I was the reason that there wasn't peace. And, you know, I was the criminal element. So I personally wasn't, but like how many meth labs and identity theft rings are you going to find me in before you think? So I get it, you know, I get they felt smug and mean and like not compassionate, but I also get it, you know. I was also in a room full of dangerous chemicals or other people's identities. So I'm the problem.
That's the defensive mechanism as well.
Yeah.
The smugness, the like better than you, the condescending, like just the fucking air of assholeness that police officers exude, especially when they're dealing with addicts.
Yeah.
That's just the defensive mechanism. That's their, I believe that's the way that we, or not we, because I'm not a cop anymore.
Yeah.
But that's the way that you insulate yourself energetically from all of the shit that you have to move through.
Did you quit being a cop because it was too much on your...
I got fired. Yeah,
Oh,
I didn't quit.
Oh, okay.
I went ahead and had the universe just grabbed it and pulled it out from underneath me.
Was the universe already pushing you in the direction of, yeah, because that's a pretty...
Yeah, hindsight, you look back and it all happened exactly the way it was supposed to.
Yeah.
And I was very much headed in that direction because so much had shifted and changed for me. Like I got so fucking, all of it was asinine to some degree, right? I got so tired of arresting the same addicts and taking the same addicts to jail over and over and over and over again because of fucking not helping anybody in the slightest.
That would be a very difficult career to have while being awake, I think. Mm-hmm. I think it would be easier to be on drugs and in that lifestyle and be awake than having to work in the system that just isn't effective, isn't helping anything, is kind of a snake eating its own tail of perpetuating more of what it says it's here to protect you from. Yeah. You know? So I love when things happen that I don't want to happen. I just love knowing that I'm getting what I want. You know, I probably had the option to release it at some point and didn't for whatever reason. I was attached to an outcome or determined that it was going to be one way. And then when it gets taken away from me, I very rarely have to sit in that loss for long before I can see like, oh, this was ultimately in my best interest. I'm always getting what I want, which is the Jessa Reed guide to always winning.
So where are you headed? Like what's next?
Here tonight we have
no, like I'm talking like big fucking picture.
Oh.
Like, good, yeah, we're definitely going to plug your show, but the one tonight doesn't matter because by the time this comes out, it
doesn't matter anyway. It's like a charity thing that I can't remember the name of the charity. So thank you for letting me off the hook. We're writing TV shows, and I think Aaron's moving to LA soon, so we can do that. We've got a few different TV shows that are similar in these themes. I really see myself as someone who writes TV and acts in it is what I really want to do. And as far as comedy, I would like to tour with my kids. I'd like to take my kids on the road. They're homeschooled, and I would like to homeschool them on the road and show them how all kinds of different people live and how all kinds of different societies operate, even within this own country. I think getting them out of the bubble that they have been raised in, which they're my kids, so they've moved quite a bit. But those are my like life goals. I want to make TV that changes people's minds, opens people's minds, and I want to tour with my kids. So I should be doing that by like 2020. That's my very optimistic trajectory.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jessa.
Thank you so much. This was great.
I appreciate it. We'll throw all the links, but the easiest way for people to find you guys, find you. Do you have a website? I think it's Jessa Reed.
Yeah, just Jessa Reed. Probably has. I build a new one and then I never update it, and then I just build a new one. But yeah, I think Mormon and the Meth-Head. That's it.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I feel like I went and found the room that I locked my inner child in when I was 11 or 12, and I have gone to rescue her. The amount of time that I put into the potential for hugs where nobody else is thinking about it, you know? Suddenly reality stopped feeling like a landscape, and it felt like a timeline. It never resonated to me that because everyone else believes it's real, it's real. It just feels like a collective delusion, and that I'm just better at dreaming than everyone else.